And hello everyone, welcome back to Trekyards Mission Briefing, your dose of Trek goodness, the discussion, the theorizations. We look at a ship, we talk about it. It could be a station, it could be anything. We theorize, we just get it out of our brains, and then you guys help us, and all goes towards a further episode later down the line. But Stuart, what are we doing for this amazing episode?
Today's a very unexpected ship, as it were. A ship from Enterprise, and not a Federation ship. This is a Klingon ship. From Season 1, Episode 5, which, unexpectedly enough, happens to be entitled Unexpected. So, that's the Klingon D4.
But Stuart, look at this picture. I don't remember this ship from the episode. Now, I know these episodes. I'm pretty sure they didn't use this ship for that. But you knew that already, didn't you?
I did.
Yeah, this was the concept ship. There's a funny story behind this. Basically, in the script, it was meant to be this Klingon ship. And they said, okay, we're going to make this model. Unfortunately, in a few days to make the 3D model. And because Foundation was so great, they were like, ah! But one of their modelers, Koji, actually did build this model based on John Eve's sketch. And they said, hey guys, the model's done, it's ready. But then the producers, they said, yeah, it's a few too many windows. We're just going to use our Katinga. Our DS9 Katinga.
And what's more, the fans won't notice, is what they said. People won't notice the difference. And I'm thinking to myself, do they know which fans they're talking about? But anyway, continue your story.
We've done this discussion as part of our Aries episode, or no, D6 episode, sorry. And we've forced it to make sense. But in this universe, this will be the actual D4. So this was designed by John Eves, and I think it's a really interesting design. But it's one of those continuity errors that I think the Trek fans overall just say, yeah, that shouldn't have been a Katinga, shouldn't have been the exact DS9 3D model. This is what it should have been. But sure, let's go back as we always do. What was the first time you remember seeing this design, and what did you first think?
Why the hell didn't they use it, is the first thing I thought. Because this is so much better. It shows the evolution of Klingon designs leading up to the D7 and Katinga. Yeah. So, really, to just use a Katinga was kind of... When I first saw that on Enterprise, I'm like, huh. Those ships are older than I thought, huh? Yeah, well,
which means they de-evolved from a Katinga to a D7, back to a Katinga.
Exactly.
I mean, I can get behind, you know, in Enterprise they use the Nemesis Romulan uniforms because they're trying to save money. I can kind of get behind that. Fashions change. It's cheaper than building Starship. Anyway, tangent. I watched Nemesis the other day. But yes, when was the first time you saw this design? Because it's a sort of an Easter egg style ship. You know, it's not necessarily well known. So do you remember when the first time was you saw it?
I don't remember. It was probably a few years ago, and it was right after my friend Dave went to Wonderfest before I had gone to Wonderfest, and he had spoke to John Eves, who told him the story about how they didn't use it and nobody will notice. And I'm like, what? And so I had to go look it up. And looked it up, and yes, it's a fantastic design. As with all John Eves designs, it's a great progression for the Klingon aesthetic, and I love it. I absolutely love this ship. The nacelles, just everything about it, I like. So.
Yeah, and this is very much like the only image we really ever saw of this design. And guess what, guys? As with lots of Trekyards, we have some fun stuff to show you. But yeah, first of all, I remember the first time I saw this, and I was like, oh, that's so cool. Oh. What? But I always thought of it as the D4, because I know it wasn't pitched as the D4, but contextually I think it makes sense, sort of. And I like the idea of having the pre-D7, D4. I know it doesn't make as much sense going to the D5, so it could be the D6 even. I mean, that would probably make more sense was the D6, to be honest, given the half nacelles and things. But the fact that it was meant to be the youngest one. Anyway, but let's move on to the actual...
But I gotta say something. I just chalk it up to the Enterprise sensors being way out of whack. So what they saw on screen was just a very pixelated version that the screen tried to clear up, and just it predicted the future without even knowing it.
Best theory ever. Yeah, temporal Cold War on sensors. There you go. But like I say, next picture. Now this is... Well, Stuart, this is the actual 3D model, which I might have happened to have done a whole set of renders on, so we don't need to rely on the 2 pictures available. Yeah, so we're going to see some good details.
Spoil us here on Trekyards. Spoil us here on Trekyards. Yeah,
hey,
really good.
We've entrusted with these models. Our job is to show them off. So this is the D4. I mean, does anything scream out to you for this view?
Again, the same issue I have really with all of Johnny's Enterprise Klingon designs. I do
Hmm.
love them, but the rigging, I think, makes it look weaker. I know he put them in there to mimic the Russian aesthetic of like having the rigging everywhere and to be an older, to strengthen the structural integrity, all that. But I think it makes it look weaker, and I don't like the rigging. I never have. Likely never will.
Yeah, and this is obviously this was designed for episode 5. So this is pre Bird of Prey, pre D5, pre anything else. This is where it's the first incarnation. I think compared to like the D7 and or the D5 and Bird of Prey, this is a much more faithful D7 style. I mean, the shapes are so much similar, but for me now it's always difficult. We're so used to these shapes, so to say it looks less advanced. I mean, clearly there's more details, clearly there's more texture, clearly it's a more advanced looking D7. Not necessarily Katinga, but we got to look at it in terms of design. And I think the fact that the shapes are bigger, they're bulkier. There's no smooth surfaces. The rigging, like you say, it does feel to me like it's their first step. They've just put shapes together, they've welded it, and then they move forward to create the later D7. Where you only need that single piece of hull for that engine, if that bridge module was here. They have 4 different pieces all welded together. Like they can't build it like they did. Although that's the thing I really noticed that's different about this design, and we do have a close up later on, is this front part. It's got these 2 circles and a very distinct torpedo launcher, which is. I don't know. What do you think?
Well, is it a torpedo launcher? This
Very
is
good question.
Matt Jeffries, the D7, that was a deflector, actually.
Yes.
And I have it here on my Franklin Mint one. It's clearly a gold deflector. But I like the idea of a torpedo being up front. It makes perfect sense for the Klingons. So, but is it, though? Is it really a photon torpedo launcher?
I don't know.
Anyway, let's lead into the next picture.
Mm.
I love it from the top. This looks cool. Like you said, it does look more Katinga-ish than, let's say, the D7, just because of the texturing on the hull, which I like. I like those little subtle touches, and I think had they gone back, well, if they did TOS now, I think there would be more texturing and whatnot on the D7 hulls.
Absolutely.
But we always say that the TOS look is more streamlined and sleek because it's more advanced. I don't know.
Although something I learned from Rob Bonchoon literally a couple of weeks ago, that in Trials and Tribulations, they actually did, like, it's a Katinga variant D7, because it's obviously got more detail than a D7, but it is a D7 because it's TOS era. So it's kind of like a midway in between. It's like as if we'd seen it now version.
That makes sense.
If you look at that version as like a retroactive, this is what it should have been, But I mean, look how grungy and primitive, and I mean, the shapes are so bulky, but I like it. It's got a good, like this does feel like the prototype. Like this, I can absolutely see. If you skip the D7, this is like a prototype Katinga. I mean, hands down. Evolution-wise, for me.
Totally agree with that.
Yeah.
But how big is this thing, you think?
While you got to remember, this is not a canon ship. This is made by the bright. It's every step apart from on screen. So later we've got some scale charts where it does show it, and while you can't say canon, if it was built by the same studio that built every other model, they built to scale. This is the correct scale based on the model, so we can. It's a pretty good indication, although they might, always say story changes the size. But let's move on to the next picture, which is the John Eves sketch. What do you think of that?
As always, the Johnny sketches are amazing. I prefer them to the actual finished renders almost every time. Just the attention to detail he puts in them, it's great. I don't know. There's lots of things I like about this design. Basically, the cutouts on the nacelles are very cool. The less round and bulbous front end, I think, looks a lot sleeker, more aerodynamic. Okay. Aerodynamic's not the right word for space, obviously. Hey, don't argue with me. And also the engines at the back, what looks like 4 impulse engines. I think that's a very cool feature. Yeah. And I think that's what's kind of missing almost in the D7. The D7 is a beautiful design, don't get me wrong. It's like the perfect Klingon ship, but it needs a little bit more attention to detail, especially when it comes to impulse engines and whatnot at the back. So this, I think, fills in those holes for me, and I love the panel lines on this. It's not so much the texturing that we saw in the last picture, where it's kind of like a feathering pattern or an armor pattern. This is just like panel lines, which looks like very clean and nice.
So this version being, like I say, without the texture, just being hull, this is a closer D7 variant, whereas the finished version they put the Katinga texturing on it. Like, would that okay?
And I don't necessarily agree with what they did with the final CG model. Well, I know the final one we saw was awful because it was a Katinga, but I mean, the one we've been looking at that you've been rendering for us, I still don't really agree with the texturing they did on that. I think more simple, more like this would have been a little bit more time appropriate, era appropriate.
The irony is that, you know, the fact is the shots we saw of it, they didn't need to make it a high detail ship like you would for an Enterprise. It could have been a very D7 stylistically low, and I think the audience would say, "Oh, that's a D7 pre." I think even though the D5 is a bit more pointy, it actually hasn't got that much detail. I mean, I've seen the model. You know, it's very much surface rather than texture, so it contains that simple feel, even if there's more pieces. Whereas this Katinga actually has texture, actually has, well, this is a D4. But yeah, I mean, I think though, you know, when you get a sketch like this, the 3D models did an amazing job making it turn to reality. Take away the texturing ideals. I mean, this is exactly what it looks like, and this is not an author. This is just one view and a side and a front of the ship. I mean, that is incredible. It makes such a faithful version, and I love it. I think I was always impressed by Foundation and what they did, and their attention to detail.
Absolutely. So let's move on to the next picture, and this one's great because it's a full orthos. Looks almost Drex file-ish.
Yeah, I think it was rendered by Rob or one of the Foundation guys and made its way there. It's just a good reference. But yeah, it gives you a really good feel of the whole ship. I mean, what do you see when looking at this?
I see a Klingon ship. At first glance, it's obvious it's the Klingon ship.
Yeah.
And if you don't look too closely, and it is far away on the view screen, it would look like a D7.
Yeah.
But it wouldn't be.
Although I think, you know, really looking at this, especially the side view, it's when the top view has very crisp lines, very crisp, even the points, which continue onto the Renegade Klingon battle cruiser. If you look at the side view, though, the engines, it's all rounded curves. If you look at the front, it's all rounded curves.
And even the neck kind of dips down a bit. It's not straight like the D7.
Yeah,
which I'm not a fan of, to be honest. It looks like it's got a broken back almost.
Yeah. Well, I was about to say maybe like it's bending because of the weight. That's why the things there, but that would be stupid engineering. Yeah.
It would be.
It's certainly a new take, and I think the side view is very interesting because how different it is, and you can definitely see links, you know, with the engine pod he took for the D5 very clearly. The warp engines, the impulse engines he took slightly put onto the Bird of Prey, so obviously he's using his own artistic cues, which is great. That's why I think this fits in beautifully, and I think it would have been really perfect to see this in Enterprise, because I mean the D5 is great and the Bird of Prey is great, although I don't like it. It would be great to have seen a proper Katinga variant, so you see a fleet of these ships and that lead the way. Even if that became the D6, I think it's actually probably works as the D6 better. To see this flying in and then 2 D5 zooming would look really impressive for all those later seasons of Enterprise. I think that would have been really great to see. We need to see a proper Katinga, not Katinga, in the show. Yeah.
One thing I really like about this from the top and bottom is those points on the front of the secondary hull. I love that aggressive look. It looks very like a Klingon batleth or
Mek'leth, or yeah,
even just their dagger. It's very, very cool. And the D7 kind of, it's not as aggressive.
No.
But this I like, and I think if the D7 had that little added touch, it would make it so much better.
That's why I love the Renegades one so much. But another thing to look at the top view is, again, a way to show less advancedness is that, you know, you can see a very clear connection point for 3 parts. You've got the 2 wings and the hull, and they've been joined. Like, they built this piecemeal, and you can see that, and it does have that, you know, plug and play rather than just one beautifully creamy smooth hull. And as far as you can do for design wise, I think that's a really nice touch. But yeah, that's probably it for this one. So the next image is, we got some scale. This is it next to the D5. Is that what you thought it would be, Stuart? And what do you think?
That's not what I thought it would be. I would think it'd be the same size as the D5 or a little bit smaller, considering it's the D4. You'd think that natural progression would go bigger. It's very interesting. It's got a lot more room, I guess, for crew and stuff, especially in that secondary hull, than the D5 does. So it's like the D5 is more of a specialist ship, kind of designed for faster speed, maybe. I don't know.
I mean, the irony is, I mean, we're looking at this with sort of post canon, but this D5 was designed to be a tanker, which was then taken off to then be the attack ship, which we then call the D5 because that's what was later called. And this again is the D4 only because someone, I think Rob or Koji said it's a D4. So there's a small, when you look at these concept ships, the very few that are the weird exceptions to the rule, linking them in is a bit more difficult. And I think this, if you think of it as D5 to D6, that's like, a really nice evolution. The other way around, I think maybe what you could say, I think you're right, speed might be a big thing. That, I mean, you say things get bigger, but look at our phones. I mean, they got smaller, and they got bigger again. So maybe, we have this very robust D4, and then they said, for a legendary new warship, we're going to really amp up the firepower, bring it much smaller, much more maneuverable. Maybe the D4 is a big hulking, really slow moving. Maybe it's faster impulse, but no maneuverability. So they refine it, and then rebuild back to the D6. Then D7 is even bigger, and then move small again for the Katinga. So, and then bigger for the Vorchar, and then bigger for the Negvar, and then bigger for Regent Worf's Negvar. But that's a whole different story. Yeah.
So yeah, this doesn't work for me, to be honest. It's like these are two different hull design configurations that shouldn't be linked with the same designations.
Yeah, but then but then you're thinking a linear progression. We talked about, I think, in our D6 episode, there should be a D6A, D6B refit and variant. I mean, there's probably alternate versions, so I like the idea of them changing stylistically.
Next time on Trekyards, the rest of this episode.
Yeah, it's pretty normal. Like, you expect this from us now. It's just like next time, next episode, it'll be great. It'll be great. If you're still watching this video, and we're still talking, why? Just watch something else. Watch another Trekyards video.
It's over. It's over. Go home.
Bye, guys.
Bye, everybody.